to ClockTower Game Studios. So today we're going to be starting off a little different. I want to first of all thank Stan over at THT World for the amazing work he's put into our graphics lately, both the thumbnail frames he's done for our videos as well as the intro and outro graphics. I think they're amazing and I'm really happy with the work he's done, and he deserves a big shout out for all of that. So thank you very much, Stan. Hopefully you guys enjoy the new graphics as much as I do. So moving on, we of course, just like always here at ClockTower, things are in flux. We've been working a lot on trying to get the game actually published, S.E.E.R, for those of you that are kind of new to the channel. So S.E.E.R is, we've been working on that pretty hard, trying to get stuff in order to get quotes for manufacturing, trying to get design work done on a box set, and trying to get book layouts done. So that's where we're at with that, and part of why plans keep changing, because there's just all kinds of stuff that goes into that wasn't expected off the bat. So there's just, like I said, plans keep changing, we're rolling with the punches and getting work done. So with the change of plans, this week I decided to work on Asphalt for the landing pad area of the transit hub. This is what the main section of the roof is going to be surfaced in to land the transit buses, whether they're spacecraft or hover vehicles or whatever on. I decided I wanted an asphalt looking surface on the roof for that. So with that in mind, I have been using one version of this sort of asphalt mixture, and I decided I didn't like it very much. It's really coarse. It looks more like a gravel road when laid down with models next to it. So I decided to try some other materials as the core mixture for the asphalt. So with that in mind, I tried Hobby Sand, which is a really fine grained sand you can get at like Hobby Lobby or other big box stores. I also tried Railroad Ballast in a really fine grade. It was kind of a middle grade of coarse grit. I also tried grouting tile grout mixture, just the grout itself. And I also tried Hobby Sand you can get at Dollar Tree or other like dollar stores. It's a little bit chunkier and it's what I had used previously. So with that in mind, I made swatches of each one to test warping, what they looked like in scale, and kind of the overall finished appearance once they were finished. So with that in mind, let's dive right into today's experiment.
So in order to get started on this, the first thing I did was cut up 2" by 2" squares of foam core for my swatches and labeled all of them so I could keep track of which was which, even if I got them mixed up for some reason. I've also, as you can see here, I've got my materials in their little containers ahead of time, and I just go ahead and start mixing them up. So my mixture here is just water, paint, and then whatever the material is, the grit that I'm adding to it, which essentially this makes a textured paint. It doesn't so much make like a it doesn't so much like make any kind of adhesive or anything into it, which I found with some of the larger grit was a mistake, and I should have used glue or something in it to start with, which I go ahead and do later. But for these initial steps, I just mix it up to where it's thick and chunky and kind of clumpy, and it runs off of the brush in kind of ribbony clumps. I don't want it too thick because I want to be able to spread it. I don't want it too thin to where it's just runny and doesn't have enough grit to it. So here you can see I'm just spreading it onto the swatches, and I do that for all of them, wiping off the excess grit and paint in between to try and keep some consistency between them. Anytime the consistency's not quite right, I just add more water or more of the grit until it is, and I do that for all of them. So as I was working with this, I was taking notes of which materials, which grits had the best consistencies and what was the easiest to work with. And I did note pretty quick that tile grout, in order to get it to the same consistency that I wanted the others at, took a lot more moisture and created a lot more of a mess in the process. It was just really dusty. It's a really fine grit texture, and it's just really a mess to work with. As I mentioned previously, the heavier grits, the bigger materials, were kind of difficult to get to stick to the swatches, to the base material essentially, without adhesive. So I mixed a second batch of these, and when I mixed these, I did 1-to-1 the same pavement colored paint that I used, and glue all from Elmer's, and I mixed it up to sort of the same consistency I had it before. I just added a little splash of water or a little more grit whenever I needed to adjust the consistency. And as you can see, you want it to be clumpy, but you want it to be able to drip off of your spatula or whatever in sort of a ribbony, clumpy sort of mess. You don't want it too runny, and you don't want it too chunky either. Once I had those mixed up to the consistency I wanted, I just painted them on the swatches the same as the others and labeled them. I came back about 2 hours later to check on it, and I noticed right away that the larger grit was still wet. The railroad ballast and the hobby sand from the dollar store were both still wet and hadn't cured and really didn't have a texture that I liked. So as I was messing with them, I was kind of taking notes of which ones had the least warping, what provided the most solid, dried quickest surface, what looked the best. And as I was going through them, I did note that the tile grout and the tile grout, both of them warped, and then the others, the ones without glue, warped more than the ones with glue overall. I did end up ranking them worst to best, and the worst were the 2 large grits without adhesive, and then the 2 large grits with adhesive, and then both the tile grouts, and then both the hobby sands, the gray hobby sand I used in the beginning. So I went ahead after I determined which one was my favorite, and I decided I was going to go ahead and do the landing pad texture on the transit hub. I started off by running masking tape around all the edges because I didn't want to get this mixture on anything else I was working with. It's very sticky, it's really messy, and the last thing I wanted was to have to try and clean it off of the rest of the model that I'd already built. So I just carefully went around and masked everything off, and once I had that finished, jumped straight into applying the texture. So after I had everything taped off camera, I went ahead and mixed up a batch of the asphalt texture that I wanted using the hobby sand, the pavement paint, and the Elmer's glue all, and a little bit of water to get it to the consistency I wanted. And then I just glooped it into the area of the landing pad there and started smoothing it out with the edge of the popsicle stick. This is really messy and takes a little time, but after you get everything smoothed out, you get a really nice, really clean, good looking asphalt texture, and peeling the masking tape away from it was really satisfying.
So after experimenting and kind of testing it and figuring out what worked best for me, for the texture I was going for and the overall look I was going for, the hobby sand with glue definitely was the winner. It has the best overall texture and feel, and it looks the best from a distance. It gives the right color and consistency, and to me it looks the most like actual asphalt, especially in scale with the models I'm using. I don't think the other models and materials I tried out were a waste of time though. I think the bigger, kind of more coarse-grained sand from the dollar store, that'll be good for whenever I want to go do a Badlands type theme. It'll give a nice rocky texture. Again, I'll do that mix with the glue in it, mostly because it'll help with the durability. I didn't like how poorly the hobby sand without the glue held up. It was just too coarse and it got knocked off easy with only the paint holding it together. I think the others worked better for that. I think if I do like a desert with more sand, I might do a tile grout texture. And of course you could always mix the two, do like some of the grout in with the heavier, coarser stones, or even a mix of all of it to get like the perfect blend of rocky, Badlandsy type desert, like the high desert type Badlands sort of vibe. Of course you would want to substitute in red if for doing like a Mars type Badlands, or sort of a ruddy brown for doing a more, you know, historic earth-based Badlands like what you would find here in the natural environment. So that's a good thing to keep in mind too when you're doing this sort of stuff, is not every failure is actually a failure, it's just learning a different way to do something else. So those techniques and those mixes that I found that way with the other materials aren't really a waste of my time and effort. They're just a different sort of usefulness that wasn't good for this project but will be good in future projects. So also like to update with the status of the transit hub. Here you can see I've got the top floor mostly primed. I still have some of the concrete to do for the steps, and you can see that I've got the interior that needs touched up just a little for the inside of the ceiling. I also have the interior of the thing painted mostly. I've got some things to work on for that, but I've got the floor tile in and I've got the interior walls painted. I've got to finish doing the restroom doors, and part of the reason this is stuck where it's at is the 3D printer is again giving me fits, and I need it for the matching exterior window on the front side of the building. But we're working on it. It'll get done. I actually have that running now, so hopefully by next time I have an update about this building, you'll be able to see the finished product when it's all wrapped up, and I'll do kind of a conclusion video to put a bow on the whole thing once it's finished. And then we can start on the next part of this build, which will be the spaceship that lands on top of it. That'll probably be a series because it's going to be a lot of kit bashing and scratch building, technical like detail parts and greeblies and all that good stuff to put together a hopefully lifelike looking sort of spacecraft using trash and bits from around other kits and things of that nature. So be sure to come back for those. So, and if you want to catch those, make sure you hit the notification bell, subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for those on our other social media outlets such as Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Instagram gets daily updates. Twitter gets updates whenever we're working on stuff like this and whenever I have announcements to make about progress for the game. And Facebook gets big announcements and video updates as well. So if you're not seeing the notifications for the videos here, be sure to keep an eye out for them on Facebook as well. Thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video and it inspired you to get in and kind of experiment with your materials yourselves, learn how to do some things you might not have before, and hopefully you guys can share some of the experiences you've had with these kinds of hobby experiments and other things you'd like to see me experiment with. Be sure to put those sorts of things in the comments below. So if you like what we do on the channel, you want to see where we take things and how things are progressing, and you want to help be a part of all of it, make sure to support us at Buy Me a Coffee, which you'll find the link for below, as well as Patreon. On Patreon this month, we're doing, of course, once you subscribe, you get access to the S.E.E.R playtest rules. You'll also, this month, be getting access to a special set of campaign rule or special set of scenario rules that kind of account for the fog of war and the uncertainty on the battlefield. And you'll also get a bit of fiction describing how our two main characters in the S.E.E.R fiction currently, Captain Ellsworth and Ellie, how they're progressing and dealing with their introduction into the larger galaxy. So be sure to check those out. And remember, at the Clock Tower, it's always game time.